Hey beauties, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a tag created by Annette's Makeup Corner. If you have not seen her channel and you like colorful looks, you will love her. Just like Angelica. Oh, it's like I know how to pronounce her last name, but then I don't know how to pronounce her last name. And instead of butchering it, I'm just going to leave it right here. Annette created the tag. Angelica did it. I've watched both of their videos and they were so much fun. I really like seeing them because they have such colorful looks. And sometimes, like I know I do colorful looks, but on the daily, it's not my go-to. And I feel like that is just their lifestyle. And I think it is so cool. It's so edgy and fun. And I get a lot of inspiration from them. So if you have not checked them out, make sure you do so. I'm going to leave both of their channels down below. But huge props to Annette for creating this tag that is actually stressing me out because I have to pick 10 eyeshadow palettes that I'm going to keep out of my collection. So if I can only keep 10 eyeshadow palettes, which ones would they be? I have a little challenge for you guys because I know you guys think you know me. And a lot of you really, really do. And I think it's so funny when you guys guess and you're right about what I'm about to say. So if you think that you already know what palettes I'm going to choose for my 10 palettes that I can keep out of my collection, pause the video and leave it down below. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a clue. These aren't necessarily my absolute favorites out of my entire collection. There are a couple in here that are my absolute favorites, but I decided to go with palettes that would be the most true to what I like to wear on a daily basis. I wanted to add in a little bit of color, but it's so funny to see the differences between my picks and what Angelica and Annette picked. I definitely think that you should see all of these videos to really see the differences in what everyone is picking. I think it's really interesting. But if you think you know me and you think you know what 10 eyeshadow palettes I am going to keep out of, I'm about to embarrass myself. I know this. You guys are going to drag me, and I can't really blame you, but I love eyeshadows. You don't understand. Eyeshadows are so much fun for me. I feel like I can get the most expression out of my makeup with my eyes. It's just my favorite thing to do is my eyes. I definitely love collecting other things like brushes. I love trying out new powders and everything, but I feel like I get the most expression out of my makeup with my eyeshadows. And I was counting my palettes just out of curiosity to see where I was at when I was having to choose 10 out of this collection because I know I have a ton. I stopped counting just a little bit after 300. I'm not kidding you guys. I would say I have around 400 to 450 eyeshadow palettes. I know. You guys are like, it is time for a declutter, but it's like I still have room for more. I don't generally keep palettes that I don't like, so everything in my collection are things that I enjoy. So I don't know. I feel like I probably should do a small declutter. It's going to be funny because I have all these palettes and I'll probably get rid of 10. I could probably get rid of 10 maybe. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to get into this video and I'm going to share with you the 10 palettes out of the many palettes that I have that I would keep. And I want to remind you that, again, these aren't necessarily my top picks out of my collection. If I had it my way, I would keep every single one of my Natasha Denona, every single one of my Pat McGrath, Marc Jacobs, there's all my Viseart. There's so many palettes that it's just like, you're not going to pry out of my hands. However, I tried to go with, again, what I like to use on a daily basis, but then also throwing in shades that I like to do whenever I use color. I don't typically use really bright colors whenever I'm going out often. I like to do it on camera, I like to show it, and I like to be creative, but if these are 10 palettes that I am going to be stuck with, and I can only use these palettes, I want to keep palettes that I'm going to get the most use out of. So that's how I went about this, and I'm just going to start off. These are in absolutely no order. I'm just going to grab and talk about why I kept them, and maybe a palette or two that was in competition with it, because I'm not kidding. I went through this at least 10 times and was exchanging palettes and then like, no, do this, and I would switch it out again. And yeah, again, it was a little stressful. I'm so glad that this is a fake scenario. All right, first palette. This palette is on top because I just used it on my eyes, and it is from Kevyn Aqua. This is the Nude Pop palette. I love cool tones, and this is one of my absolute favorite when it comes to cool tone eyeshadow palettes. It kills it. I just absolutely love this because you can get a little bit more of a soft, I feel like this is a soft, sultry type of look, and you can get really, really deep, smoky eyes out of this. And I feel like while this is a cool tone palette, you do still have a little bit of color in here in more of a natural tone. These shadows blend out so beautifully. All the mattes are so lovely. What I have on my eyes today is this shade right here, all in the crease, blown out as my transition. And then I went in with this shade right here to deepen it up just slightly. This on the outer corner and crease to deepen up even further. This shade right here, again, added a little bit more depth to the very, very outer corner. And then I have this all over the lid. I applied this shade all underneath the brow arch and kind of blended everything out, and then I spot highlighted with this one. It doesn't look like I have that many shadows on my eyes, but that's because this palette blends out so well. It is one of my absolute go-tos and absolute favorites when it comes to just a cool tone eyeshadow palette. And you do have a little pop of warmth in here with this gold or coppery tone, but it just goes together so beautifully, and I love the different textures in here. One palette that I kept going back and forth is the Stiletto palette from Marc Jacobs. But I was like, I don't need that one if I have this one. So this one won that race. The next palette is more colorful, but in a more subdued type of way. And it's from Natasha Denona. This is the Sunrise palette. I really enjoy the warm tones in here. These are the tones that I like when it comes to warm tones. I don't gravitate to the really orangey, bright reds and stuff as much as I used to. Say the Sunset palette, for example, I would say that is like the old version of what warm tones were. And there's nothing wrong with that palette. I think it's a beautiful palette. But when I want to use warm tones, this is what I gravitate towards. I love corals. I love the watermelon shades, and I just think this one is so well-rounded, and I really love the purples. If you look at it this way, you've got a nice little range of soft, more natural tones, and then you can add your depth and color over here. And Natasha's formula is impeccable. I love them. So this was one of the color palettes that I decided to add into my 10 palettes. This one's a little funny to me because I don't even really grab for this very often, as in maybe a couple times throughout the year. And it's mainly because I don't want to hit pan. This is a palette that is limited edition, and it's one of my absolute favorites from Anastasia Beverly Hills. One of those palettes that I just wish she would make permanent so that I didn't feel so scared to use it, and it's the one with Mario. So the master palette with Mario. Oh, this is so pretty. This has everything you need for just like a smoky, sultry eye. Natural but glamorous. It's not too intense. The metallics in here are soft but impactful, not too shiny, but still impactful. I feel like this is just one of those palettes that is just amazing. I love the green. I love the blue. These burgundy shades mixed in with these champagne shades. And then this orange right here, again, it's not too bright of an orange. It's more on the rustic side. I just love this palette. And I talk about it, I think, just about any time someone says, all right, you're going to pick such and such and you can only keep such and such. You can't take this away from me. This is a palette that I have to have. It's just one of those that I don't think I will ever give up. And if they ever decided to bring this back, I wouldn't be mad. I would not be mad. I would buy another one and start using this one more often because I wouldn't be so scared of running through it. Speaking of running through a palette, I bought a backup of this, and it's so funny because this palette is one that I didn't like it when I first got it. I really didn't, and I feel like that is a huge clue to you that watch my channel. You know what I'm talking about. This palette, I got it, didn't love it, and then I used it again, liked it more and more and more. I bought a backup and I'm so glad that I did because I have hit pan. And hitting pan on palettes for whatever reason gives me anxiety. If I hit pan on a palette, I buy another one. I know that's kind of a little overboard. I continue to use the palette that has the hole in it, but I have to have a replacement, and it's the Tarte Aspen Ovard palette. This is one that has a blush and highlight in it as well, and it just looks so basic, and it really is, but that's one of the reasons why I use it so much that it had to be in this list. I use it far too often to not put it in this list. As you can see, pan, 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 and then there's another shade that I think I was about to hit pan on. Oh wait, I think it was this one last time and I just finally hit pan on it. I love these tones, and the reason why I love it so much is because it is lighter. I have a lighter skin tone, and sometimes shadows, I love pigmentation, but sometimes shadows can be a little darker than what I want them to be, and I don't get that soft, subtle look that I am looking for. And this palette gives it to me because this shade right here, I can't dupe it anywhere. I cannot find this shade anywhere else. And it's just this really soft, neutral pink. You're not even going to see it on my hand, probably because I can't even get in there with my nails. But I love this color all over the lid and blown out into the crease. It just looks like a really natural makeup look, and I can get a little bit more glam with it with these shades over here. You can get a beautiful bronzy smoky eye with this, and then of course you have your blush and highlight in there as well, but I'm just talking about these shades right here are the perfect lighter tones for me when I just want something that's not going to be too in your face. It's going to be soft, just naturally beautiful. Pat McGrath. I did choose my favorite palette from Pat McGrath. I could have picked every single one of them. Like I said, I don't want to leave those behind. If my house for some reason caught on fire, I'm running for my Pat McGrath. Like, we got to get those and get out. So it's going to be no shock to you guys that the Mothership 5 Bronze Seduction made the top 10 list of palettes that I would keep. And the reason being is not only that it is my favorite Pat McGrath palette, and I feel like I couldn't have a complete collection without having Pat McGrath in it. I just feel like that would be wrong. That would be so wrong. Her special shades are there, nothing compares to them, and she has my favorite matte formula. Now with this palette, there was something else I considered, and that is the fact that I do still want some color whenever it comes to my 10 collection here. I want to pick stuff that I really enjoy, and I love a really red blown out look on me. Something about it I think really is flattering on myself. And this red right here is beautiful. I just swatched these in a recent video. I was talking about game changers and how the Pat McGrath formula is a game changer. But I'm going to go ahead and swatch these again for you. This one down here is, all four of these are the special shades I always talk about. You have this one that is more of like a gold that reflects green. This one is a green that reflects a little bit of gold. You have this beautiful red. Whew, and then this one right here, just I live for them. So when I want to choose color, I don't typically go for the really bright, shades. Like, I love my Anastasia palettes. They are so beautiful. The larger ones, the Norvina collection. But do I have to have them? No, not for me personally. I don't have to have those to feel like my collection is complete. I feel like I've kind of gone past that portion of my life. I think, a couple years ago, I would have wanted some really bright colors, but right now, the point of my life and the style of makeup that I am wearing, these are what I consider to be colorful looks that I gravitate towards. And then this is the perfect palette. If there was one palette in my entire collection that I love the most, not necessarily the one that I use the most or the one that I use, daily or anything like that, this is my favorite palette that I have in my collection. I can safely say that and just know that this is the one that you can't take from me. You cannot buy this from me. If, you know, this became sold out everywhere, there, you could not offer me enough money to give you this palette. I'm gonna just put it that way. Imagine this. I'm looking through all my palettes. I know I want a Viseart palette in there. I know I want it to be one of my matte palettes. And I am going through and I am struggling, you guys. I first have the mattes, the neutral mattes 2, Melidia, I don't remember how to say that. Have that palette in my hands. I'm like, I'm sure, yeah, this is it. And then I was like, no, I feel like I need the original neutral matte. So then I switched it over to that one, and then I changed my mind again. I was like, no, I have one even better. And I went with the Grande Pro Volume 1. And the reason being is because if you saw my video on this palette, I talked about that oh no, I just lost 2. I'm always dropping stuff. Why am I always doing that? Hold on, let me get these 2 shades off the floor that just fell out of my palette. Anywho, as I was saying, if you watched my video on the Grande Pro Volume 1, I mentioned that if you had all of the matte, you know, 12 pan palettes, especially the cool tones, the neutral ones and stuff like that, that you didn't necessarily need this one. I think it's a beautiful palette, but that you didn't need this if you had all of the other ones. And I am a collector. I have just about all of them, of the matte ones. I know I don't have the editorial one, and I think there's one other one that I don't have, but I was like, oh, I'm cheating the system with this one because this is going to give me some color. So where I am lacking, you know, that vibrant color that I might randomly want on a day or two, I've got some right here. I've got this purple, I've got this deep blue, this shade here. Then I have all my neutral shades, my cool shades. It's just, and it's all matte. So if I want to do a look, which I love doing looks that are just all matte and then just blown out, this is it. So I was like, I feel like I'm cheating the system just a little bit because I just have everything that I could possibly need in this palette when it comes to Viseart eyeshadow palettes. And I also considered doing the Grande Pro Volume 2 because it had all the shimmer shades, the toppers and everything, but I was like, I don't know. So I was going back and forth. This is definitely one that you could get just about anything in this palette other than a shimmer, and you know, I've got those in my other palettes that I picked out. So yeah, like I said, I felt like I was cheating the system a little bit with this one, but it's a palette and it works out for me, so it's there. The next 2 are palettes that I do use quite a bit, so I just can't really leave them behind. I feel like these are palettes that I can't dupe out, and I have to have them in my collection. The first one is from Charlotte Tilbury, and it is the Pillow Talk palette. I know you guys are probably so tired of hearing about this, but again, it's just one of those palettes that I can't dupe out. This pink in here is not like the one in the Tarte Aspen Ovar palette. It's not like any of the shades that I have seen. So I've been told several times that these colors are like this shade, this shade, and this shade. I've seen on Talia, and I have these colors in my collection, and let me tell you, they're not the same. Sometimes I see swatches of things side by side, and I look at them online, and I'm like, okay, yes, absolutely, those look like at least very similar dupes. But then I go into my own collection and I'm looking at them like, this isn't right. So sometimes you have to consider that light plays a portion into it. That's why I've kind of moved from just doing swatches of palettes side by side to doing it on my phone. I will set up my phone and swatch them and show you guys so you can see them actually side by side and not in a picture where the light isn't as even, or you don't have just 2 shades side by side and things like that, because I think that you get more of an accurate representation of the colors. And I think that happens a lot with this palette. You can get similar type of looks, but I want these shades. I want these shades because for me, again, this creates a softer look. And then I love this shade right here all over the lid and all into the crease for a smoky eye that isn't too intense, so it's not too dark. And then the topper shades, I love them. And I know this is debatable. Not everybody loves Charlotte Tilbury's formula, but I do. I really do. I would be lying if I said I didn't. And this is just one of my absolute favorites from her in general, and I could not leave it behind. Also, I'm having a mini panic attack because Tom Ford Tom Ford, Tom Ford, Tom Ford. We need to have a talk. We need to have a talk. First off, you took all my brushes from me. You took my bronzer brush. Thankfully, I have two. My eye brushes, all these brushes that I absolutely love, and you changed them. Yeah, that's my face. And then you're making these palettes a little bit smaller. I didn't even realize until recently that a lot of them are losing a gram of product. Not the wet dry formula, but the regular formula. So just keep that in mind. You up the price. I still love you. I still love you. I'm still buying you because I love Tom Ford. I can tell you when you're doing wrong though, and that's wrong. And so is the last palette that you put out. What is it? Why am I touching my nose? What is it called? The Badass palette. That's what it is. Badass palette. That palette was not okay. It's not okay. And what's also not okay is you are reformulating my Coco Mirage. You are discontinuing this and reformulating it, and I'm already angry with you. If it is not the best thing ever, I am going to cry. I noticed recently that this palette, I talk about it and talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. It's getting harder to find this palette. So I thought maybe, you know, it's just a coinkydink and people were just buying it. So it was just being out of stock. Nope. It is getting reformulated. And from what I understand, it's this shade down here is going to be more of just the regular matte. I feel like this is an all matte palette anyway, even though this one technically has a little bit of a shimmer to it that doesn't look like a shimmer on the eye. Like, leave it alone. You better believe I will do a video when the new one comes out of them side by side. I'm telling you, Tom Ford, if the Coco Mirage is not the same quality, I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry because this palette is one of my favorites of all time. I could never leave this behind. I think this is one of those palettes that's just always going to be in my top favorites. Things that if you ask me for a collection of things I would keep, this is going to be in it because it is absolute perfection. I will tell this story a lot. I know, I'm sorry, but my first experience with this was when I worked at Nordstrom. I went from working at MAC to working at Nordstrom, and my main knowledge was MAC eyeshadows. And then of course I knew some other ones because I did YouTube, but I didn't know Tom Ford and I didn't know this palette. And I remember the first time I used this on a client and I was like, why is this so easy to blend? Why is it so pigmented? Why have I been struggling with my MAC shadows? And this is blending itself out. That was a moment of Tom Ford. It's just that's when I fell in love with Tom Ford, and I could never, ever, ever, ever give this palette up. I do have another one, but honestly, I am considering, if I can find it somewhere, purchasing another one because I don't want to be without that palette. And if they ruin the new one, I am gonna freak out. I'm gonna freak out. All right, let's go on to the next one from Anastasia Beverly Hills. I was going from the Jackie Aina palette because I was like, oh, I do want to add some color. And I was like, but I really love this palette. And then I even thought about the Carly Bible palette, and I was like, no, I think the one that I want to keep is this one right here, the Sultry palette. I even considered Soft Glam, you guys, but the Sultry palette again has those cool tones in here with that pop of coral that I just absolutely love. And again, this is more on the natural side, more on the cool tone side. I love this palette. I've reached for this one quite a bit, and I love all of the shades from the mattes to the metallics. And there's definitely more metallics in here than there are mattes, but they picked the right mattes. And I said this with my Nabla Cosmetics palette. This one right here, Twig is a matte, Fresh is a matte, Dystopian, Slate, Birch, Bloom, and Noir. So maybe that's the same. It's probably even, and my eyes are just playing tricks on me. More than likely, hold on. Yeah, it's evenly dispersed. I don't know why I look at it and I just think that there's a lot more metallics than there are mattes, but there's not. There's actually not. This is something that I can get a lot of different looks out of, and I know it seems like you wouldn't because of the tones in here seem to be very similar, but you can get something really rosy, like with this rose. This is rose quartz, and then you take bloom around it, and you're gonna get a really bright pink, beautiful eye. And you can also take rose quartz and add twig and get a little bit more of a natural tone with a little pink hint to it, or you can go down this route. Let's take Cyborg and get a really, really intense smoky eye with that on the lid. It's just a very versatile palette, and yeah, it's in my top 10. Lastly, certainly not least, my favorite Natasha Denona palette. And this is where a lot of the color is going to come into play as well. Because this has the greens, the blues, the reds, the golds, everything, I think this is a kind of a mid-ground palette. So it's color and it's also a natural palette at the same time. And that's what I love about it. I know you're looking at this and you're probably thinking that is a lot of gold or a lot of orange, but there's so many different textures in here that it really creates different looks on the eyes. You're not going to get shades in here that are repeats, even though it can look like that. And these have the marker shades. What else do I want to call them? The marker shades. These look wet and skin-like. It's so beautiful. And look at the shade right beside it. You pair those together. Oh, and let's just go ahead and add this one into the mix. Why not? Why not? I mean, look at that eye. That is a colorful eye. It is a green colorful eye, but it's still a colorful eye. And then you can get the blues, the golds, everything in this palette. You see, I have used this to death. That's because I love it. And I struggled with whether or not I should add another color into my collection or if I should add in the Viva palette. So it was between this one, even though this one is my all-time favorite Natasha Denona palette, I went back and forth with the Viva palette because that one I use a lot as well, and I know that I would get a lot of use out of it if it was something that I had to put into my collection of just 10 palettes that I was going to use. But then I thought about the Viseart palette and I was like, I think I can get away with having those mattes and go with this. So I think that my collection of 10 palettes really speaks to what I like and the shades that I like to pick. And I think it's so funny, again, that I didn't choose anything that was really over the top with color. Whereas, like I said, Angelica and Annette, they definitely had these really beautiful palettes in there. And these are palettes that I love. They talk about Kaleidos makeup. Oh, I love them. And Annette talked about, I don't remember if it was in her top 10 for the year or in her video. I don't remember because I've watched a lot of her channel recently. She talked about Kaleidos being the next generation for eyeshadows, like for next year. And I absolutely agree. I love my Kaleidos palettes. They are so pigmented. If you haven't checked out Kaleidos and you're wanting something that is more colorful than necessarily my collection over here, definitely check them out. They're absolutely amazing. And I could definitely do my top 10 colorful eyeshadow palettes if you guys wanted to see that. You just have to let me know. But these are the palettes that I decided on. It took me a little bit, but these are the palettes that I decided to keep for my 10 palettes. Let me know if you guessed right or how many you guessed right. Don't cheat. Please don't cheat. I really love seeing how well you guys know me because sometimes you guys are dead on. Anywho, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I encourage any other content creator that wants to do this tag to do it, especially if you really love eyeshadows and it's a hard thing for you to decide. I think it's a little bit more interesting to see what you would actually pick. Make sure you check out Annette's channel as well as Angelica. I will leave them linked down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not already, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye guys.